Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Pope. Today's episode, just going to hit on a couple of topics, or really one main topic, and then a question that I had come in. This has already been talked about a little bit because I'm a little bit late. I had a couple other the podcasts already lined up, but the ban on trapping in California. Like I said, this has been around for a couple weeks now when this is posted, and it's everybody's probably talked about it, but there's a really good write-up about it on my buddy Jeff Trainer's website, Fur Bear Conservation, and it's titled "California's Trapping Ban: A Closer Look at the Ramifications." And anytime he writes a article on there, it's very detailed. It's very long form with a lot of information. It's really it's not just a quick breeze over it. He's really detailed and does a lot of research, and I appreciate the information that he puts out because it is so thorough. So I'll link to that below in the description or on the show notes, as this is episode 60, I think, even 60. So check that out. I'll also post it on social, links to it on social, Instagram and Facebook, because it's definitely worth reading. And he kind of he covers the gamut, but it talks about how California's regulations over the years have gotten increasingly more restrictive, and really that it's not. I think all of us would agree that it's not surprising that this came about, especially in California, right? I mean, they're extremely progressive, or probably a better word would be regressive. So it's not surprising, but it is definitely unsettling in the precedent it sets, right? Because that's effectively the politicians telling wildlife managers. It's not even that. It's not even telling wildlife managers that we don't value the science that you bring to the table. I'll get to that in a minute. Try to go through my notes here and keep it kind of consistent. But the scary thing is it does set a precedent for what is likely to occur, attacks that are going to occur in other states. This year has been especially fraught, I guess, with attacks from the antis and states across the country trying to restrict or stop or different, trapping and hunting, just a wide variety of things. The antis have been really active though, but now they've got something that they can wave their flag and point their finger to and say, hey, these people are on board. You need to get on board. This is the future. These are I don't even know a good word to say because it kind of turns my stomach. But I mean, from their perspective, they're going to say that they are conservationists for doing this, right? When in reality, we know that that's more of a preservationist mentality of protect everything and hands off, don't touch anything. And we know where that goes. I got a really in-depth email from John Zander Fur the other day, giving me kind of an update on the fur market. So that'll be in the next podcast, so be on the lookout for it. That was really good. I appreciate John reaching out with that. But one of the things we've kind of gone back and forth, and one of the things that he talked about was the activity in New York City with the proposed fur ban in New York City. And one of the major drivers in that decision and that argument to not lose the fur industry was the economic impact that industry had, and the jobs that were associated with that, and that trickle-down effect. And I feel like if that's, as trappers, we've got to do something to get through the emotion, or at least the emotion, because that's, I guess, in a sense, even the economic impact of somebody losing their job is still an emotional draw, I guess, or emotional feeling, and hopefully these days you never know, but hopefully people appreciate a person's loss of rights or loss of livelihood more than an animal's. we should, right? But y'all know as well as I do that that's not always the case these days. But you know, as I think through, I'm constantly thinking about how to bear with me. I'm thinking. I know I'm blanking out on you for a minute, but I'm constantly thinking about how do we put our best foot forward in the trapping and trapping community, especially. You know, hunters can people relate and appreciate and can give the pass to, oh, well, you eat the meat, but you know, people aren't always as reasonable, you know, when you get to, oh, well, all you do is take the fur and just throw the carcass away, which is not always the case, but I mean, the reality is most of the time it is. But one thing that Jeff points out, and that was really, you know, we all know it, but I don't think the general public can't know it, and I think it's one thing that that we need to do a better job of making sure that's pointed out is that there's, well, I don't think it's necessarily, so kind of the way I'm getting to this, and it's a roundabout way, but you know, I took in my notes here, I was taking, you know, the economic impact was a larger driver in the New York City fur ban argument. So, you know, that can also be tied to California, because, and Jeff pointed it out in his article, right after the fur ban was instituted, or the trapping ban was instituted, the residents of one of the suburbs of Los Angeles maybe passed, I guess apparently by vote, that they were forcing the city to do something to control the coyotes. I wonder how they're going to control the coyotes through trapping, right? How is that privately owned company going to be paid? They're going to be paid from the city through taxpayer dollars, because that's the only way that they can be paid, you know. And then also, excuse me, as with pretty much every state in the union, there's an active USDA Wildlife Services program that's more in the rural areas, but they're also out there doing control work, coyotes, cougars, things like that. And so, again, that's funded by the taxpayers. Now, I'm hesitant. I don't necessarily think that's the best argument to put forth, because as trappers, it's not realistic for us to go in and trap in the inner city of Los Angeles to catch coyotes, to remove problem coyotes just for the fur. That's not practical. You know, that's got all kinds of additional headaches and liabilities, and you know, that's not what the majority of us as trappers got into trapping for. We want to be out in the rural areas, away from all the people and all the headaches of that, right? So I think that, while is a valid point, I don't think that's our best first argument to go with. That, hey, y'all are now paying for something that you could have let trappers handle. Now, in the more rural areas, that is more plausible. But again, I'm hesitant about setting the precedent that trappers can provide this service for free, because a lot of that is dependent on what the fur market's doing, right? Right now, while coyote prices are sky high, heck yeah, you know, most folks that can, especially in areas where there are good high quality coyotes, are out trying to catch coyotes. But in 2 years or whenever, when coyote prices tank, and you know, you're dealing with what I'm dealing with of $5 coyotes most of the time, nobody's going to be out there. So there again, to make it make sense and make it worthwhile, the landowners are going to have to pay someone to provide that service. The one kind of highlight I feel like that we can, you know, maybe, and I'm wide open to anybody's suggestions, man. I'd love for y'all to leave in the comments or send me an email with your thoughts on this, because this is something that I think about a lot. especially with my platform and putting trapping information out, for the public to view, is what's the best way to gain a positive response from the non-trapping community, and get them to see what we're doing and appreciate it versus want to ban it, right? And so I think one of the best things that we've got going for us is that we utilize the resource. There's so much so much focus and so much emotion, and a lot of people are tied up in not wasting, and recycling and being green, and saving the planet, so to speak. And especially I guess I hate to say this, but like the millennials and the younger generations, appreciate, in my perspective, appreciate utilizing resources, renewable resources particularly, instead of wasting them or just throwing them away. And I think this is the perfect scenario, because what is the USDA Wildlife Services, and what is the critter control companies that are going to go trap coyotes in downtown Los Angeles? What are they going to do with those? They're going to dispose of them. They're going to incinerate them or whatever. They're not going to utilize that resource. Whereas as trappers, we're out there, we're trying to maintain and control populations where we can, for all the benefits, the scientific benefits that are there, right? To manage disease and manage population numbers and all that jazz, right? We all know that, but that's not a very emotional argument. People, when I hear people talk about, like the California trapping ban, people, I saw trappers talking about how, they don't realize that, we need trapping to control these populations because of disease and starvation and et cetera, all that. And while we all know that is sound wildlife management science, from the outsider's perspective, there were no trappers in North America 600 years ago, or there are areas where there are no trappers and the wildlife populations are doing fine, right? Sure, they may experience population booms and busts, and a huge run up and then a major die off from disease, starvation, whatever. But in reality, nobody's seeing that for the most part, and so that doesn't tug at the heartstrings a picture of a coyote in a trap, right? But if we can tie in there, I feel like, and I've all just kind of been thinking about this recently, but tying in there the way that we use the resource, and trying to really show the way that we care for the resource, the way that we manage. We're not out there trying to trap everything. We want this. We're managing this in a sustainable way, and we use this. We are out trying to provide this service where we can, and we use what we catch, versus we throw it off in the ditch or bury it or incinerate it or whatever. I feel like that maybe grants us some, I don't want to say leeway, but maybe is a feather in our cap. Because in part of what has been not portrayed very well is the fact that these private companies, USDA, are still out there trapping. So just because everybody feels good in California that there's no more fur trapping, there's still companies out there trapping, and now they're not able to utilize that fur, or they're not going to utilize that fur to begin with. So that natural resource that we're so excited about protecting is getting totally discarded, wasted, and disgraced by not being able to be used for anything. So, I don't know. That's just a perspective as I've thought about this a lot and thought about that lately. That I've came up with. So leave your comments. I'd be absolutely delighted to know what y'all think and where you shake out on that. How you feel. Trying to think about it. You know, the biggest thing is we got to try to think about this stuff not from a trapper's perspective, but from, you know, our neighbor's perspective. That's never set a trap. That's never seen an animal in a trap. All they know is the Roadrunner cartoons of these big tooth traps that look like they'd cut your leg off, you know? So, excuse me. That's that. One other thing, you know, I'm sure y'all probably have seen this too, of the video of the little girl in Illinois that the family's doorbell camera caught the video of a coyote running down the street, and as the girl was playing and running in the front yard, the coyote comes up and almost attacks her. And that was I'll try to either embed that in the video or leave a link to it below too, although like I said, I'm sure you've seen it already. But I looked up that article, and you know, that's obviously getting a lot of interest in, and there's a couple of, let's see, so I'm reading this on the USA Today, and there's a couple of links that I wanted to check out. One says, coyote attacks on pets are on the rise in metro areas, and small dogs are especially vulnerable. But they talk, so at the end, you know, they give the spokesperson for the DNR says the best way to encounter coyotes is to yell and throw your arms and wave, not run away. But then, let's see, the last sentence says the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County says on its website that coyotes are largely not a health concern in the area, and that the county does not have any documented case of coyotes biting humans. Well, the first thing that I thought of was coyotes haven't always been in that area. You know, it's only been in the last 30, in some cases 20 years maybe, that coyotes have really spread across east of the Mississippi. And so, you know, coyotes living in suburban Chicago is not a thing that's been around that long. So that's not really valid data from my perspective. That, you know, that's like saying, you know, I live in Georgia and we have no documented cases of polar bear attacks, so polar bears aren't are harmless. Like, come on now, let's use some common sense here. So, you know, and I saw a lot of people tagging that and saying that that's going to happen. That's going to occur more often, you know, in places like California, and absolutely it is. There again, unless you're in the wildlife control business and not just in the private, you know, fur trapping business or land management business, that's not something that you are going to impact, or that's going to impact you for the most part. So anyway, that kind of wraps up. I mean, that's you know, hate to hear it. That's one of the things that John Zander mentioned, is that, you know, it's not like California was that large of a fur producing area, although from what I've seen, they have some areas that in the past produced some really nice bobcats. But the precedent that sets of, you know, fur trapping being banned in a state, you know, what that means down the road for other states, other governments, and all the other trappers out there. So I'll use that as a plug to support your National Trappers Association, Fur Takers of America, the Sportsman's Alliance, you know, any of these organizations that support trapping and are pro-trapping and are out there on the front lines, on the legislative lines, trying to make sure that we are keeping our rights and abilities and freedoms that we currently have, because look at California, it can definitely be taken away. Look at Colorado, Florida, Washington State, where foothold traps are not legal. I'm pretty sure in all those. You can't count on it. We got to fight for it. The next thing I was going to, I had a listener write in a question. Excuse me, I'm trying to get over a cold, so I apologize for making all these noises. But he's actually a listener in Canada, and he writes an email with the one thing he was asking about. He said currently 75% of the coyotes I'm catching here are in advanced stages of mange, so he's wondering. He's looked up online, and of course you can find anything and everything online. But is there any possibility of humans contracting mange, or is that something that we as trappers need to be worried about, especially when we're encountering high instances of mange? So one of the first things I did, I got this. It was relatively easy for me to get my hands on this because this is a field manual of wildlife diseases in the southeastern United States. So I got this when I was studying wildlife biology at the University of Georgia. It's actually produced by the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study, affectionately known as SCWDS, which is in partnership with the University of Georgia. So I was able to get my hands on this, and it's specific to the Southeast, but a lot of the diseases and species are going to, it talks about elk in here, black bear, all your fur bears, cottontail rabbits, gray squirrels, armadillos, turkeys, quail, waterfowl. So it talks about a wide variety of wildlife, and it just lists it goes through by species. And so let's see, this big one's not super long. So here it lists wild swine, feral hogs, and it lists the disease, causative agent, clinical signs, lesions, hosts, diagnosis, transmission, wildlife management significance. And it does that for every, and also public health implications with citations for any research. And it also includes locational maps of any of the areas if the disease has been located in specific areas. So it's really helpful if you see something weird, or if you have people ask you questions. I like having this just because it's something quick and easy to jump to. And so when he asked that question, the first thing I did was break open this, and it's got sarcoptic mange in here. And so the causative agent, sarcoptic mange in red fox, is caused by the mite Sarcoptes scabiei. And it lists clinical signs, symptoms, hosts, diagnosis, life cycle. It's got some pictures, and it lists the wildlife management significance. So this says sarcoptic mange is the most common disease found in red foxes in the southeast. 65% of SCWDS red fox cases from 1967 to 1995, and probably accounts for substantial mortality in that species, so red foxes. Experimental studies have shown that red foxes do not develop an effective immune response to reinfection compared to that in other species of hosts, and this inability to control infection likely explains the devastating nature of sarcoptic mange in red foxes. Sarcoptic mange is also a common and important disease in coyotes. Sarcoptic mange is not a disease problem in gray foxes. So that's interesting. And then the public health implications. This has listed Sarcoptes scabiei has limited implications for human health in that transient dermatitis with severe itching has been reported occasionally in people who handle mange-infested coyotes and foxes. So it's saying that some of the symptoms are seen in people, but the disease itself can be seen in people, but the disease itself, or in that case the mites themselves, are not. And so I found, in doing a little more research, I found a couple of places. Let's see. I found one article in particular. So on the CDC, Center for Disease Control website, they have a page on dogs and diseases, and at the bottom of the page, talking about pet dogs and diseases, it says people can't become infested with the canine version of sarcoptic mange, but they can have a minor local reaction to the mites if they come in contact with an infected dog, just like the wildlife disease handbook said. So I did find an article in the journal. It was CDC Journal of Emerging Infectious Diseases. And this was published in 2018. It's called Sarcoptic Mange of Fox Origin in Multiple Farm Animals and Scabies in Humans, Switzerland, 2018. And it outlines a case of foxes that were regularly coming in and around a farm area, with people obviously in the area too, a small scale farm with a variety of animals. And so it says, the Sarcoptes scabii mite is a causative agent of scabies in humans and Sarcoptic mange in animals. The degree of host specificity and cross-infection of Sarcoptes scabii mites are still debated. So let's see. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights here, but pruritic skin lesions developed in several species. Let's talk about the farm animals. 2 to 3 weeks after repeated episodes of mangy red foxes sleeping in the stables and making partial body contact with the livestock. Pruritic skin lesions also developed in 4 persons who had direct contact with the domestic animals, but not the foxes. So prurititis and skin lesions disappeared in the affected animals and humans within 6 weeks after more than 2 treatments with avermectins, topical, neem oil, or both. And so here, kind of summing it up, it said, however, we found no evidence of mite reproduction, which suggests that the mites that transmitted from foxes to other species were not able to actively replicate. So, in just a summary, kind of a generic outline or paragraph here at the end, it says, increased fox abundance, reemergence, and continuous spread of Sarcoptic mange in foxes could lead to its emergence in other wild and domestic animal species. Although mites or their DNA cannot be demonstrated in the affected humans, their clinical signs were highly suggestive of scabies, highlighting the zoonotic potential of Sarcoptes scabii mites. The zoonotic mean transmission from animals to humans. The propensity of foxes with mange to live close to human settlements, the increase of green farming, and increased density and size of domestic animal populations augment the risk for contact between foxes, domestic animals, and humans. Therefore, such outbreaks might become more frequent in the future. So that's all of it, but it was so it's a little bit confusing because there is scabies in people, but the gist is that the mites from infected animals that cause the Sarcoptic mange, apparently while they can get on people, they can't reproduce, or they haven't been shown to reproduce on people. So I guess in that case, you can have the occurrence of a kind of a small scale mange area, so lesions, losing hair, whatever. But if the mites can't reproduce, then you don't get the full encompassing full body effect that you see some coyotes and foxes and whatnot with, of not a lick of hair on their body. So from that instance, I'd say overall there's not, according to the research and the data, there's not as these have said, there's not a major health implication of people to mange and foxes and coyotes. That being said, there's obviously more, and I think this is more in well, I'd say Eastern, the European countries, but probably not. There's more people that are wanting, kind of the small scale farms, and so having animals, having livestock, and it's not people that are used to living, a rural lifestyle where, they're used to seeing a mangy fox and shooting it instead of thinking how poor the thing is and maybe I need to feed it, right? And so I definitely could see more instances of people coming in contact with mangy critters, mangy coyotes, foxes, whatever, and I guess there is potential long term for a couple of those mites that do have the ability to reproduce, and we've got a whole another thing on our hands. So as a general rule, personally, Yeah, I don't have a lot to lose because we don't have super high value coyotes here in the South. But if I catch a coyote that's mangy, I just drag him off to the side, right there on the site. I try not to even put him in my truck. I mean, I got a dog at home. I don't want to pass any of that along anywhere. So I try to kind of, if I kill one, if I catch one, I try to kill it immediately, handle it as little as possible. Just try to cover the bases all the way around so that I don't have to worry about any issues with myself or my critters at home that may be, or any other thing that I come encounter with. So I hope maybe that was a question somebody had concerned about also. And with that, I hope y'all are having a great week, and I will wrap it up and tell y'all that I know, hey, this will be the last podcast for September. Next month is October, and I know some of y'all's trapping season starts in October. Also, I emailed, if you're on my email list or if you follow on Facebook, I posted a survey to try to get a better feel for where my audience is from experience-wise, what their, what the target is, why you trap is basically what I entitled it. What you're targeting, where do you live, and what your experience level is. So I'll also leave a link to that if you wouldn't mind filling that out, and just to try to help me, try to tailor the content that I'm producing to what y'all are looking up for, what y'all are wanting. So hope that's going to be valuable. I've gotten a lot of responses, and I really appreciate everybody that's responded. It's really helpful for kind of seeing where people are at, and really it's all across the board. I'll another couple weeks or another couple episodes, and I'll try to kind of give a rundown of that survey because I think it's pretty interesting data. So I appreciate y'all following along. Appreciate the survey filling out if you had, and if you hadn't, I appreciate you going and filling it out right now. And we'll catch you next time. See ya.